Hey everyone, I'm your host Peter Zablocki, and you're listening to History Shorts. I hope everyone's having a great day so far, and thank you for making this show a small part of that. If you'd like to help me out with a small gesture, please leave History Shorts a rating or a review, and click that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. For sources and books used as the basis for these episodes, how to advertise on a show, and other information such as a list of our upcoming guests on the conversation series, or a link to our Patreon account where you can find exclusive episodes not heard here, please visit www.historyshortspodcast.com. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate podcast listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the globe, all in one place. Download Podcast Republic now and take your podcast experience to the next level. Having said all of that, Calvin Coolidge, the 13th President of the United States, remains one of history's most understated figures. A man whose laconic demeanor earned him the enduring nickname Silent Cal, yet whose life brimmed with eccentric anecdotes, dry humor, and unexpected acts of resolve that painted a portrait far more colorful than the reserved public image suggested. And here is the rest of that story.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Born on July 4th, 1872, in the rural hamlet of Plymouth Notch, Vermont, Coolidge grew up in a world of Yankee frugality and hard work. The son of a farmer and storekeeper who instilled in him a profound sense of duty and simplicity. His early years were marked by quiet ambition. He attended Amherst College, where he honed his skills in debate and law, eventually setting up a modest practice in Northampton, Massachusetts. It was there in 1905 that fate intervened in the most peculiar fashion, setting the stage for one of the quirkiest romance stories in presidential history. While shaving in front of an open window in his boarding house, clad only in his underwear and inexplicably topped with a derby hat to keep his hair from falling into his eyes, Coolidge caught the eye of a young schoolteacher named Grace Goodhue. Passing by on her way to work, Grace burst into laughter at the absurd sight, a sound that carried through the air and piqued Coolidge's interest, rather than embarrassing him. What could have been a fleeting moment of mortification blossomed into courtship. The two married later that year, in a simple ceremony at her parents' home. Their union would prove enduring, filled with its own share of whimsical episodes that revealed Coolidge's hidden playful side. Shortly after the honeymoon, for instance, Coolidge presented Grace with a bag containing 52 pairs of socks, riddled with holes, dryly remarking that while he hadn't married her solely to darn them, it was mighty handy to have the skill at hand. Years later, during a visit to a government experimental farm, Grace inquired about the rooster's impressive mating frequency, up to a dozen times a day, and then cheekily suggested the farmer relay this to her husband. When Coolidge heard the tale, he asked if it was the same hen each time. Upon learning that it wasn't, he quipped, "Well, tell that to Mrs. Coolidge." A rare flash of risque wit that underscored the private humor sustaining their marriage amid the demands of public life. Coolidge's ascent in politics was as steady and unassuming as his personality, beginning with local offices in Northampton, city council, solicitor, and eventually mayor, where he built a reputation for efficiency and fiscal conservatism. His big break came in 1919 as the governor of Massachusetts, during a time of post-war unrest that culminated in the Boston police strike. The city descended into chaos as striking officers left streets unguarded, sparking riots, looting, and widespread disorder that threatened public safety on a massive scale. Coolidge, ever the pragmatist, responded with decisive action. He mobilized the state guard to restore order and then summarily fired the strikers, declaring in a telegram to labor leader Samuel Gompers, "There's no right to strike against the public safety by anybody, anywhere, anytime." This bold stance resonated across the nation, transforming Coolidge from a regional figure into a symbol of law and order. The phrase became a rallying cry for conservatives, propelling him to the Republican vice presidential nomination in 1920 alongside Warren G. Harding. Their ticket swept to victory, and Coolidge assumed the largely ceremonial role of vice president, presiding over the Senate with his characteristic brevity. He once described the position as akin to a little old woman on the back porch, simply knitting, a self-deprecating nod to its perceived insignificance. Yet destiny had other plans. On the night of August 2nd, 1923, while vacationing at his family's modest farmhouse in Plymouth Notch, without electricity or telephone, I should mention, Coolidge was roused from sleep by a knock at the door. Messengers had arrived bearing grave news. President Harding had succumbed to a sudden heart attack in San Francisco. In a dim glow of a kerosene lamp in the family room, with a handful of reporters and relatives as witnesses, Coolidge's father John, a notary public and justice of the peace, administered the oath of office at 2:47 a.m. on August 3rd. It was an unprecedented moment, the only time a president was sworn in by his own parent, in a setting as humble as Coolidge himself. After a brief ceremony, he calmly reflected, "I thought I could swing it," before returning to bed for a few more hours of rest. The next day, he boarded a train for Washington, D.C., stepping into the presidency amid the scandals of the Harding administration, including the infamous Teapot Dome scandal. Coolidge's response was characteristically straightforward. He cleaned house, appointed honest officials, and steered the nation towards stability with his philosophy of active inactivity, doing only what was necessary and letting the economy heal itself. Once in the White House, Coolidge's quirks came into full bloom, turning the executive mansion into a stage for his eccentricities. Forbidden by the Secret Service from actual horseback riding due to security concerns, a restriction that he found irksome given his love for the outdoors, he installed an electric mechanical horse named Thunderbolt in an upstairs room. This contraption, resembling a child's hobby horse, but equipped with motors to simulate trotting and galloping, became his daily ritual. He'd ride it up to 3 times a day, clad in a cowboy hat, believing that it aided his digestion and overall health. The press, ever eager for fodder, lampooned it as undignified for a president, but Coolidge remained undeterred, later experimenting with other gadgets, like vibrating belts, to help with weight loss. His mischievous streak extended to pranks that delighted in mild chaos. He would occasionally press every button on his desk simultaneously, summoning the entire White House staff in a flurry of confusion, only to dismiss them with a straight face. During formal tree planting ceremonies on the grounds, where speeches were expected, Coolidge might instead unearth a worm from the soil and comment dryly, "That's a good angel worm," leaving dignitaries bemused. These antics contrasted sharply with his public persona, as evidenced by the famous dinner party wager. At a White House get-together, a vivacious young woman seated beside him confined that she'd bet a friend that she could elicit more than 2 words from the president over the course of the evening. Coolidge, without glancing her way or altering his expression, simply replied, "You lose," sealing the bet with his trademark economy of language and earning chuckles from those in the know. No narrative, however, of Coolidge's presidency would be complete without delving into his extraordinary affinity for animals, which transformed the White House into a veritable zoo and revealed a tender, almost childlike side to a stoic leader. The menagerie began modestly, with dogs like Rob Roy, a white collie who accompanied Coolidge on walks and even appeared in official portraits, and cats such as Tige and Blackie. But it escalated with exotic gifts from admirers and diplomats, such as a pair of lion cubs whimsically named Tax Reduction and Budget Bureau to align with his fiscal policies of cutting government spending, but also a hippopotamus called Billy, which was eventually donated to the National Zoo. Then there was a wallaby from Australia and even a black bear cub that proved too unruly for domestic life. Birds abounded too: canaries, a thrush, and a goose named Enoch, adding to the animal family. Yet the star of this presidential pet parade was undoubtedly Rebecca, a raccoon sent from Mississippi in 1926 as an intended Thanksgiving feast. Upon her arrival, Coolidge took one look at the lively creature and declared her pardoned, refusing to consign her to the dinner table. Instead, Rebecca became a cherished family pet, roaming the White House corridors on a leash, lounging in the presidential bathtub for baths, and attending events like the annual Easter egg roll cradled in a basket by First Lady Grace. She dined on gourmet treats such as green shrimp and eggs, and even joined the Coolidges on vacations to the Black Hills of South Dakota. Rebecca's antics were legendary. She'd escape her enclosures to raid offices, scratch furniture, and generally vex the Secret Service agents tasked with her containment. One agent reportedly grumbled that chasing a raccoon wasn't in his job description. To ensure her happiness, Coolidge sourced a mate named Reuben from the zoo, but their union was very short-lived. Reuben soon escaped, never to return. Eventually, Rebecca's mischief proved too much, and she was relocated to the National Zoo, where she lived out her days as a celebrity attraction. This episode, more than any policy speech, humanized Coolidge, showing a man who found joy in the simple companionship of creatures great and small, perhaps as a respite from the weight of governance. Coolidge's presidency, spanning from 1923 to 1929, was defined by prosperity and restraint. He inherited a nation reeling from World War I and scandal, but under his watch, the Roaring Twenties flourished. The economy boomed, unemployment plummeted, and federal budgets ran surpluses thanks to his relentless tax cuts and spending reductions. He vetoed farm subsidies and bonus bills for veterans, arguing they fostered dependency. Yet quietly, he supported civil rights, appointing African Americans to federal posts and advocating for anti-lynching laws despite Southern opposition. His foreign policy was isolationist, yet pragmatic, signing the Kellogg-Brandt Pact to outlaw war and reducing naval armaments. Coolidge's communication style extended to his press interactions. He held over 500 conferences, more than any predecessor, but answered questions in writing to maintain precision. In 1928, as re-election loomed, he stunned the nation with a terse announcement: "I do not choose to run for president in 1928," typed on slips of paper handed to reporters without elaboration. True to form, he left office in March of 1929, just months before the stock market crash that ushered in the Great Depression, a timing that spared him blame, but invited speculation on whether his laissez-faire approach contributed to the bubble. Retiring to Northampton, Coolidge penned his autobiography and columns for newspapers, reflecting on his life with characteristic humility. He passed away suddenly on January 5, 1933, at the age of just 60, from coronary thrombosis, leaving behind a legacy of quiet competence. Grace outlived him by 24 years, preserving their story through memoirs that captured the man behind the myth. Thanks for listening.